We just watched Jokic throw a masterpiece at us. I don't know. You tell me. I thought after game two, I thought this had a good chance to be a sweep and that Denver was beaten down and semi-broken. And this is what happens to back-to-back teams. So 72 hours pass. They summon something. They figure out something. And from that point on, they flip a series in a way that I only have a couple historical examples of. What is the number one reason this happened to you? Because now they're up 3-2 heading back to Minnesota for game 6. But the series has flipped in the most unusual way over the course of a week that I can remember in a while. Why do you think that happened?
I think maybe 3 different things. So I'll give you 3, Bill, off the top of my head. 1 is Minnesota maybe relaxed a little bit. 2 is the greatness of Nikola Jokic. And 3, I'll place it on our industry. The media acting like Jokic can't play, acting like Denver's championship really didn't count because of who they were going through. And they're a team that wasn't going to be able to bounce back, and they were diminishing what they did last year. And you saw Michael Malone use that as motivation. And I don't know how much that played a role. I personally was disgusted in the way that it was covered. And I'm not talking about you specifically because you said sweep, but you gave, I think, a pretty logical reason. It was the health of Jamal Murray, right? Murray didn't look good. But other people were coming out and saying, well, this proves that what Jokic did last year was a fluke. Kind of sounded like he didn't deserve 1 MVP, never mind 3. And that's clearly not the case.
Yeah, it seemed, I don't know what happened to Murray last week from game 2 to game 3, but, he looks way better. Christian Brown the last 2 games has really helped them. Gordon has been awesome game 4 and game 5. But the big reason is Jokic, his computer super brain, just figured out how to slow the pace down correctly against the Timberwolves. And then today, specifically, just picked apart Gobert. It felt more like a boxing match to me. It felt like watching the superior boxer who, when they show the scorecard after 10 rounds and they go to Harold Letterman, what do you have? I have it 10 rounds, nothing, Jokic, Jim. I just think he's dominated. That's what he was doing. He was just killing Gobert, the defensive player of the year.
To me,
good.
No, to me, it seemed a little bit more like Tyson and Peter McNeely, right? Where it's just like one punch and he goes down, because I think it was over pretty fast. And then he wasn't the only people killing it. I'm looking at people on social media and people are killing Gobert so bad that I felt bad for him.
Yeah. Well, you and I didn't think this because I think we've been riding in the front seat of the Jokic bandwagon. And I know I've been in my share of personal life arguments about it. And some people were slow to come around. Some people were begrudgingly admitting how good he was. But then as soon as this Minnesota series turned, like you laid out in the beginning, it was like, see, told you. Well, who did he beat last year? Well, go look at the playoff teams they beat. They didn't beat anybody. Hey, great, congrats. You won 1 title. A lot of people won title. We heard all this stuff. I kind of think he needed this to just kind of slam the door on. If they finish off this Minnesota series, God knows what's going to happen. But I feel like he needed this in a weird way because people still didn't believe, because he just doesn't look the part of this guy who's this generationally special basketball player. I don't think people can wrap their heads around it. And yet if you watch it day in, day out, this is what he does. He's the most consistent superstar. He's the most consistent super duper star we've probably had since I don't know what offensively. I mean, even LeBron wasn't at the level. He's averaging 30, 13, and 8 in the playoffs now for 4 years. This is just, you have to go back to the Bird, Jordan, Magic era really for any of this.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you say it before that you think he's one of the greatest offensive players of all time. And I can maybe argue that there are guys just as good as him, at least during my lifetime. I can't argue that there's a guy better than him. I wouldn't say there's anybody out there that I would say is definitively better than him. To me, it was growing up in the 80s. You're looking at Magic and Bird, where they got the combination of I can score when I want to, but I also make my teammates better. It's Curry who kind of did it in a different way by his gravitational pull, and he made everybody better that way as well. Even a guy like LeBron or Luka, who are both fantastic, and Luka specifically is a little bit more heliocentric than LeBron, but LeBron's got the ball a lot and doesn't necessarily make other guys better passers. And you saw it when you grew up watching Bird, right? He made
Yeah.
everybody else on that team a great passer. Jokic has the same impact where he gets the ball, he gets rid of it, and it's almost infectious outside of maybe Michael Porter Jr. But like, look at the player Aaron Gordon has turned into, where it's almost like he's learned for like some of the passes that he made tonight, where he
Right.
finds Jokic curling to the hoop, and it's like they're just on the same wavelength. And I think he's helped him see the game in a different way. I think he's done that for all his teammates, and I personally think that's what great offensive players do.
Yeah, and he brings a selflessness. Now it just sounds like we're throwing Jokic Kool-Aid at each other, but it was a pivotal moment at the tail end.
Yeah.
KCP goes and grabs the ball from him so he doesn't get the turnover, because this new stupid thing NBA teams do, not relatively do, when they dribble out the clock and take a turnover because they're up 15 with 29 seconds left. I have no idea why they don't just shoot. But Jokic was about to get stuck with the turnover, and KCP ran over and grabbed the ball so he would get the 24-second shot clock violation. It's like, it's a little tiny thing, but shit like that matters to me. That's the kind of stuff you look at when you're like, how tight is a team? And then the other thing I noticed after the game, and we've seen this, there's only a handful of guys. And as much as I love Tim Duncan and I ride with Tim Duncan, I think he's the 7th best player of all time. I don't even know if he did this night to night. When somebody is so great during a game that you see the guys walking off and they're coming over to high five them, and they're just kind of like, holy shit, man. Like they have that look on their face like, Jesus Christ, I'm just honored to give you a high five right now. Very few guys have levitated in that territory where the people on their team, the coaches, the equipment managers, everybody's just like, I can't believe what I fucking just witnessed.
Yeah, I think specifically maybe they even do that a little bit more after this game, because I would argue this was the best game of his career. I mean, I think you can make that argument of what the stakes were, right? And all the heat he was taking. Like, you got all the critics that are all over his case, basically saying like, all right, this is the first time you faced adversity. And Bill, that's like kind of what we love, because I know we're on the same wavelength. It's like you like defending champions trying to defend the title, right?
Yes.
And then I also love, and it's the reason I was so angry with Durant for going to Golden State, is I love to see when a super duper star has his back up against the wall and how's he going to react. Whereas when Durant went there, it allowed like Curry to kind of pick up the slack, or if Curry struggled, it allowed Durant to pick up the slack. You never really saw those guys in that spot. They didn't have to be in that position. Whereas Jokic was put in that position. He's down 0-2. He's got all these critics. How's he going to respond first time he's faced adversity? And I think it really is the first time that he faced adversity, because 2 years ago and 3 years ago, he had the injuries to Jamal Murray.
Right,
there's no pressure on him.
Yeah.
Last year, what'd they go through the postseason 16-4? There was really never a tight spot outside of 2-2 against Phoenix. Here is really the first time he's faced adversity throughout the course of his entire career. And guess what? He's passed it with flying colors.
Yeah, I remember a week ago, I led this podcast with like, hey, what if Minnesota sweeps? What are all the ramifications from this? And the last piece I talked about was Jokic, and saying, if he actually solves this Minnesota team, which is the best, that defense they played in game 2 was, I think, the best defense any of us had seen in 20 years since the 04 Pistons. It was like, if he can flip this will be the thing in his back pocket that you just pull out anytime somebody is complaining about him, questioning him, wherever you want to put him in your pantheon. This will be the first thing mentioned.
100%. You didn't overreact there, too, because Eddie and myself did the same thing on our show, where that individual performance by the whole team, but I'm talking about game 2 specifically, the best defensive performance maybe that we've ever seen. So you put that in the proper context when you were talking about it on your pod. And for him then to do that against a defense that's that good, I mean, think about it. He went up against a defense that we're comparing like 2004 Pistons, 2008 Celtics, the 89 Pistons,
all the greats,
the 91 Bulls. And he just went out there and had, I don't know, what's the final line? 40 points, 13 assists without a turnover against that defense. And Rudy Gobert.
5 shots.
Yeah, and Rudy Gobert's got the, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Now, whether you think he's worthy or not, the guy's got 4. What is it? It's Ben Wallace, and it's I believe, Dwight, and it's him. So he's got, or Dikembe, excuse me, not Dwight. So he's got the 4, and he does it against him. He does it against them. It makes the performance even more amazing.
Yeah, and I still don't know why Minnesota decided not to keep playing like they did in game 2, where they were picking him up full court, really pressuring him, harassing Murray. I thought that was such a big part of their success. Maybe they couldn't sustain it. They couldn't sustain the intensity. Maybe Denver figured out something that I'm not smart enough to see. on my giant TV. But even like today, I kept waiting for Naz Reid to pick up Jokic, because they started pressuring
Yeah.
Murray. So then Jokic would bring it up. And in game two, especially, Naz Reid was coming way up and just bothering Jokic and trying to get in his. And they just didn't do it. They let him kind of get into the spots he wanted. And the thing I love about his computer brain in this series was he figured out all the different locations on the court that were the best places to attack, right? Like sometimes he would go high to the right and just kind of see what he needed to see and then kind of attack quick and then do that kind of hurly-burly spin, double, triple spin move he does. Other times he would just try to post up Gobert because he knew he could back him down. And I thought Draymond was interesting at halftime talking. I thought Draymond was good tonight. He's saying at halftime about how is Gobert letting him back him backwards like that? Like he's the defensive player of the year. Why are you going backwards? But the point is he just figured it out.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about Draymond is Draymond's acting like he didn't get his butt kicked against Jokic like in round one a couple of years ago when Jokic didn't have any teammates. Yeah, Jokic kicked his butt too. That's where he kind of hurt the hamstring, I think, in the final game of that series, and he was still fantastic. It took him about a game and a half to figure out Draymond back in that series. And then the other thing with Jokic, the two plays that stuck out to me tonight, and usually it's a pass that sticks out. How about the lefty hook? I think that was in the first half where he gives you the lefty hook. To be able to do that at his size is just freakish. And then the other one was the righty hook. I think it was over Gobert when he's like fading away into the corner. He throws it high off the glass where it looked like he was off balance. I mean, so just the touch that the guy has on every single type of possession is just amazing.
I enjoyed Jamal Crawford tonight, but he brought up Hakeem versus David Robinson in 95, which was kind of the iconic, I'm now taking this personally and I'm going to destroy your career playoff performance. The reason there's pieces of it with Gobert Jokic, but Gobert just isn't good enough. He's not in the Jokic class. The thing what made the Hakeem Robinson thing so special was Robinson was handed the MVP during that series and Hakeem just his eyes narrowed and he famously just laid the smackdown from that point on. This is a little different. Gobert, the best they played in this entire series was game two. He didn't play. And I'm still not positive, now it's like I might be back in on my Gobert trade, 210 cents on the dollar. Maybe I'm back in on that take, but I just think Jokic is at a different level. I liked the most when it was Naz Reid and Towns as the two bigs against him.
100%, because Naz Reid and Eddie and I talked about this as well. He's a little bit more girthy, right? So you saw what Jokic is just shoving him right under the basket with Rudy Gobert. Naz Reid, he can't necessarily do that to. Naz Reid is not the defender that Gobert is, but that's something that he's unable to do in regards to using his weight. And with the Hakeem and David Robinson, if he's going up against Embiid, he's doing that, then you could, I think, use that reference that Jamal's talking about because Embiid's the guy that a lot of people still out there. I think even after this game, unfortunately, I don't know what they're watching are going to argue Embiid, but we talked about it on one of the pods I was on with you several months ago. It's like the gap between this guy and everybody else in the sport is as big as it was at any point when LeBron was dominating the sport.
2013 range. Well, Embiid had 70 against the Spurs.
He did. That's a good point, Bill. I forgot about that.
So I don't know how that compares to this.
The gap is tightened a little bit after that point. That's right. I forgot about that.
I said this on your show, but I haven't said it on my podcast. After he won the third MVP and now what he's doing this series, and assuming they can finish this off, they'll go to the next round. They're going to play OKC or Dallas. I just think, to me, this is the Western Finals, this Denver-Minnesota matchup. I think Jokic is in my top 15 now. And I made the list, and I have this whole group in the Pantheon where it goes Hakeem, Shaq, Moses all in a row. And they're like 12, 13, 14. And then I had Oscar and Kevin Durant at 15 and 16. And I just don't see how I can separate Jokic from Hakeem and Shaq and Moses anymore. If he wins, especially if he wins another title or even makes the finals. Moses had that 5-year run on Houston and then the last year in Philly. 3 MVPs, won a title. Shaq had the 3 straight finals MVPs. And Hakeem, for 3 years, maybe 4, was out of control, won 2 titles, and was just awesome. And this Jokic run is as good as all those runs. I think.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw it on TNT towards the tail end. They gave Moses an extra MVP when they were running through all the MVPs. They put up the
They gave him
graphic.
4?
They gave him 4 on the graphic, and they
Oh,
got Magic and
Jesus.
Bird behind him with
No,
3.
he's 3.
So he's at 3. But no, I agree with you there, and I would also say like the title maybe that he won, and I want to give Jamal Murray his credit, and we talked about this on my show with you the other day as well. But he won it with him as his sidekick. Like Shaq wins his 3 in LA. He's got Kobe Bryant, okay, who's a top 10 to 12 player of all time. Moses, as good as he was, what did he need before he won his first title? He's got to go to Philadelphia. He's got to team up with Dr. J, who's an all-time great.
Andrew Toney, who was one of the 12 best players in the league that year. Yeah,
exactly. Killing the Celtics. And Mo Cheeks, who, regardless of what you think should be in the Hall of Fame or not, is still in the Hall of Fame. And Jamal Murray will probably be there at some point as well. It's really easy to get into the Hall of Fame. But like, yeah, the sidekicks that he's won, that's why, I don't know where you said you had Durant at like 15. I don't think it's any question that Jokic is ahead of Durant.
No, he definitely bumped him. Hakeem won the title in 94, where his best sidekicks.
Exactly. That's why
it was a hodgepodge. Yeah. But that was also a pretty weird year for the league. That was the year MJ was playing baseball. Reggie Lewis had passed away. Like we lost some good players. The talent, it was kind of between two eras a little bit. Magic had just left. Bird had just left. But then the next year he won with Drexler. Jokic, I think I heard you guys talking about this the other day, where Jokic has never played with another All-NBA player.
Yeah, so Tom Haberstroh has this on his Substack, where he ran through the list of guys through this point in their career. So basically, at the age of 28, how many MVPs did the guy, or how many All-NBA players did the guy play with? How many All-Stars did the guy play with? And how many All-Defensive guys did the guy play with? And like, I think it was within a 5 or 6 year radius, because DeAndre Jordan obviously made an All-Defensive team, but he doesn't count because he's well past his prime. He made an All-NBA team as well, did DeAndre Jordan. But
I'm not counting him.
Exactly, and neither did Tom in the piece. And Jokic has played with 0 guys. The average guy, I think, played with 14 of them to this point in his career. Average guy played with 14. Jokic is the only one that has played with none of those. Magic played with the most at 32. Bird was second at 29. Jokic 0. So the point of like basically the article is he's had the least amount of help of any MVP since 1984. This is all 1984 on.
So we do the Ringer 100 voting, where we vote for the 100 players, which it's gimmicky, but it's fun to try to make a list and see where guys rank, right? So Murray is somewhere in that group with, Anthony Edwards is probably past him, but he's in there with Mitchell and Fox. I had him the last time we voted. I think I had him 14th because I value the playoff thing, right? If you're going regular season, he's probably not top 15. But if you're valuing how he can go up a level in the playoffs, so let's say he's 15. I had Aaron Gordon on this list somewhere in the 50s. And those are his 2 best teammates. This is in the league. And going back to like that Moses example where he's playing with Dr. J and Mo Cheeks and Tony, I do think he should get a little more credit for his ability to lift everything up, which we saw during those no Murray seasons.
Yeah,
he's just throwing a team on its back that would have been like a 20-win team otherwise.
I mean, what was Will Barton, his second leading scorer, like the next leading scorer behind him? I think one of the years when he did that, a couple of other guys that are out of the league. And with Murray, like Murray hasn't even been fantastic in this postseason. Let's be honest. I mean, Murray was against the Lakers, had 2 good quarters, maybe in the entire series. And then in this series, he's been so-so. Tonight, he wasn't great. He hit a couple of shots late to sort of make the stats look better. But Murray hasn't been the same player he was last year by any stretch.
He had a nice little stretch in game 4 that I thought was huge, and he was good in game 3. The Heat Pack was kind of his signature moment of the series, and I know you guys talked about it too, but Russell and I talked about it on Sunday night. I just can't believe he wasn't suspended. I just based on the history of punishment for that kind of stuff, and if I'm a Minnesota fan now that I'm down 3-2, I'm moving into full-fledged, we got absolutely screwed. That guy should have been suspended. If you go back and watch the clip, it's kind of crazy. Like Towns could have easily stepped on that Heat Pack and gone flying and like hyperextended his knee or something. It's a clear 1-game suspension. So at least Minnesota has that to grab onto.
Without question. And like any player out there, it's the same thing with Mitchell Robinson when Embiid pulled his leg. Like Mitchell Robinson should have went to the ground and pretended like Embiid shot him.
But yeah, he should have rolled around for 10 minutes. You're right.
Exactly. And somebody should have saw that heat pad and like slipped on it. Now, granted, they probably didn't know that, Jamal threw it. They were probably just surprised by it. And, I think you talked about this, but it's got to go down if they win as one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history. Like, he gets suspended. Minnesota wins that series, maybe the championship. Maybe it affects Boston. Boston wins the championship, whereas they can't beat Denver. So, like, Minnesota's not the only team that should be ticked that Jamal Murray didn't get suspended. Like Oklahoma City, Dallas, Boston, like anybody with a legitimate shot at the championship.
Or Jokic just would have put them on his back in Game 3 and just laid the smack down.
Which would have made the legacy even, grow even further.
We'll never know. The other thing I missed as I look back on trying to figure out how much did I overreact after Game 2? What would I do differently? Edwards was so great in round 1 and the first 2 games of round 2 that it really felt like, the MJ initials were getting thrown around. We knew that wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't like comparing anyone to him, but that's how good he was. And you see tonight, he looked like a 22-year-old kid tonight. He made a ton of mistakes. He just wasn't that good.
Yeah, and 22 is why I'm not going to hammer the kid, and I hope that's not what other people in the media do. And I almost
22
feel like,
years old.
Exactly. And look what he did in Game 4. I mean, Game 4, 44, 5-5 on, I think it was like 15 to 26 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. Like, he was amazing. His teammates didn't lift him. They really should have been up 3-1 if his teammates came along for the ride. And I hope the rest of the media doesn't do that. And I almost feel like the media as a whole kind of put him in that spot where people have to criticize him because it's like, oh, he's Jordan. And then people get defensive. Then they rip him. See, I told you he's not Jordan.
I know. Meanwhile, he didn't do anything other than say, please don't compare me to Michael Jordan.
Exactly. And people are going to hammer him tomorrow probably. Oh, I told you he's not Michael Jordan. But listen, the way that he accepts criticism, I think, is like first class. The way that he handled like the loss the other day in Game 3, where he's like, no, that's directly on me. Reggie Miller was 100% right. We got veterans that are 35, 36 that are pointing to their head coach in Phoenix and in LA that don't take responsibility like Anthony Edwards took at the age of 22.
Yeah. The only people who should be getting hammered tomorrow are Tyrese Halliburton and Rick Carlisle, which we'll get to in the next segment. I'm still not sure Minnesota's out of this series. They're coming home for Game 6. And I don't know. I for some reason, I can't count them out yet because we have seen them dial up the defense. So I'm not ready to say this is over. But I will say, if Denver did flip this series and they're going to end it in 6, I was going back. I was trying to figure out the great dig deep series flips we've had. And it can't just be like a team that was down and came back like the 81 Celtics. It's like that's a comeback. That's not a dig. We're digging deep. Our backs aren't just against the wall. They're through the wall. And then we turned it. And by the end of the series, we're just like fucking tattooing the other team. The 2016 Cavs doesn't even totally qualify for this, but I think they have to be mentioned just because Game 7 was so close. But Game 5 and Game 6, they really spanked the Warriors. If you remember Game 4, right before Draymond punched LeBron in the balls.
Yeah.
That was 2-1 in Cleveland, Game 4. And the Warriors played one of the best games of the entire Curry era and beat them in their house. And the game was pretty much over when Draymond did the thing, but it felt like the series was over and then the Cavs flipped it. The 06 Mavs is a really good one where Dallas wins the first 2 and it's Game 3. And then Wade makes that big comeback. They get some calls and all of a sudden by Game 6, Dallas is a shell of themselves, right? So that's probably your worst case scenario. The 95 Rockets fell behind to Phoenix 2-0. And got waxed in the first 2 games. They were down 3-1 after the 4th game and then came back in those last 3 and 1 and 7. The 93 Bulls lost the first 2 to the Knicks and came back. And then I think my favorite one for this is the 77 Blazers where I'm going way back and people listening to this are like, who's on the 7? That was the Bill Walton Blazers. Portland wins the title. They lose the first 2 games. Near the end of Game 2, Daryl Dawkins gets in a fight with Maurice Lucas.
Yeah.
Somehow Doug Collins is the only one that gets punched. Dawkins goes, destroys a toilet in the locker room after the game. He's mad the Sixers didn't help him out. And game 3, that's it. Portland just runs them off the court for the next couple games, and they win in 6. It's pretty rare to see a team establish dominance, and then by the end of the series, they're getting their ass kicked. And I don't know if that's going to happen in this series. Do you think game 6 will be the culmination of that, or do you expect Minnesota to fight back?
I think Minnesota's going to play hard, just because I love the leadership of like Anthony Edwards. I mean, Conley's a big blow.
No Conley tonight. Yeah, we should have mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, because we talked, Bill, about all season Conley and how important it was to go get like Monty Morris at the trade deadline, even though it's not a big name. We're like, oh, that's important for Tim Conley to go out there and get. Just because they have their offense falls apart down the stretch if they don't have Mike Conley on the floor. So like that was important. So the loss of him is obviously important. And here's the other thing I think that maybe we as a whole overreacted to with Minnesota in saying that, maybe they're the championship favorite at one point after they were up 2-0, is all season long, their offense wasn't any good. Specifically down the stretch of games, like their clutch offense was bad. We get on the Celtics case all the time, but their offense down the stretch isn't great. I think they're returning down to, the norm maybe over the last couple of games where we didn't see it in the first 6 when they're going up against Phoenix, they're going up against Denver. This is kind of the offense that we saw during the regular season out of them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, they lost by 15 tonight. We'll see. They at least got Towns going a little bit. Conley, I'm sure, will play in game 6. And they're going to have to figure out a way to summon the game 2 energy again. I don't know if they will. Denver might have done it. I don't know how they did it. I really don't. But it's going to be a feather in the Jokic cap.